Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Inspired in Berlin podcast. My guest today is Mira Culić Griffiths. Mira is a transformational and clarity coach to leaders, entrepreneurs, and executive teams, and a consultant to digital health and medical startups. Mira is also a co-founder and co-host of the Mind Takeaway podcast and Unlearning Labels podcast. We'll learn a lot more about Mira. Mira, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me and inviting me to take part.
So let's start right away with your journey. Tell us a bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are? When did it start?
Oh, God. Well, it's maybe a little bit unusual journey, but maybe not. I think we all have some not so planned things happening in our journey. I kind of started my work career, to put it that way, as a physiotherapist, and that was something that I really wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think my dad asked me when I had to choose high school, so I think I was 13 at the time, 13, 14,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, you can do some technical schools, or you can do nursing, you can, like, whatever it was in town where we lived at the time. And I heard this physiotherapist, and I watched something on TV that it was during the war, and they were interviewing some physios of what they were doing and how were they helping people that were injured. And I just wanted to do that. And I was lucky to, I think it was every 4 years, 30 people could sign into that class.
Okay.
And I was lucky to be in that year and to be one of these 30 people.
Oh, wow.
And so it was, I think all in my life was pretty much, I'm interested in something, and then I go and do it. And it's not like, oh, I really work hard to get there. It's more like that's direction in which I'm going. And, you start noticing opportunities. And then I went to Dubai when I was 24 and did a job that was not really related to physiotherapy. And then I ended up being a manager of a spa, and I set a business for somebody else. At that time it was also beauty industry, the treatments and stuff. And then I was a little bit bored of that. I was like, I really want to go back to physiotherapy. And I did that. And I went on to my salary was halved. It was just so I can support myself, but it's just something that I wanted to do. And then I ended up specializing in pain management, and that's how I came across more psychology and coaching. And then I decided to come to Berlin, and then I started coaching, and I still did counseling and stuff, but and then ended up being in a leadership role, and I realized how much actually coaching and knowing myself has helped me to be a better leader and help other people and coach other people and overcome some of my own personal limitations that I had, that I didn't know I had, because everything until that time was easy. So I think when you're presented with a challenge, you then grow. And that's how I ended up later on starting a company with Peter and coaching leaders and entrepreneurs, like people that are really in challenging positions.
Wow. So that's quite a journey. So you start with your own interest in physiotherapy. Did you also do any sports?
I was running. I was 800 meters runner, but I'm quite short, so I didn't really achieve much. I just like doing it. And handball, but that was when I was much younger. So, but yeah, not really, big into sports. But yeah, I think the part of, I did work with sports people. I did work with football players, especially in the beginning of my career. Football players. I worked with basketball players, and that was quite funny because they're, I'm like half their size. And then I worked with rugby players in Dubai when I was there. So there was always sport involved in sports performance into what I was doing. But I wasn't really myself a sportsman or sports person, not sportsman. It's the old
the language
ways
is still
of
there.
thinking. The old language is still there. Yeah.
So do you think while you were working, let's say, much more with the body, were you kind of also picking up a lot of the psychology of sports? Because there's a lot to that, right?
Yeah, it was. It's interesting. It's interesting that you're saying this. I'm actually working with the e-gaming, esports team at the moment. But it is, and it always puzzled me when it comes to humans and how we perceive things and difficulties. I think I learned a lot from my patients as well. Is you see somebody who is paralyzed or in severe pain all the time. And they don't see that as a difficulty. They don't see that as an obstacle. And then you see somebody who has, who's sprained their ankle, and that's a big difficulty. And they can so seemingly no obstacle to the outside world. It was a big obstacle for them. And then I've seen, how much human psychology plays in healing, in how we perceive obstacles, how far we can go, in everything in life. But yeah, that made me connect, see the connection in it.
What would you say drives these people who power through pain, or not necessarily power through pain, but manage their pain and still kind of stay focused on something that is seemingly impossible for the rest of us?
I think that they don't really, it's the way they see it. They don't see it as an obstacle. They just see it as that, and they don't take it personally. I think that's also one of the big things. So it's not happening to me. It's just happening. It's pain is there, but I'm not taking it personally. It's and then pain isn't so strong. I mean, one of the things that I was, one of the things in pain management is actually to take the psychological aspect of pain. So it's taking it personally. I can't do anything because of it, or trying to push it away. So the more you try to push away pain, the more it persists. It feels stronger. But when you make peace with that, when you see it as just part of life and not fight with that, it reduces in intensity as well. So I think that would be three things: that it's not taking it personally, not seeing it as an obstacle, just seeing it as something that is there, it's part. And a third thing is not fighting it. If you have fear, or if you have low confidence, we were just recording an episode on confidence. If you try to fight and change the way you feel in order to do something, you spend awful lots of time on doing that instead of doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
So it's changing the perception. So it's different perception of things. Yeah.
Do you think the cause that people are chasing, let's say these superhuman people, is just so big that there's no room for trivialities like pain?
Possibly. I think they find a meaning in it, and it's really interesting because you can have two people that are in the same family, that have different perception of things. I was once talking to a guy whose brother was in chronic pain since he was born, pretty much. And he was very successful in his job, with his family, and he said, I don't know how he's doing it. Like, I have no idea how he's doing it. It's just that it's not the obstacle. I think it's, we're all scared. We all have fears. But some people acknowledge that they have them and they just go through it. And some people, just see that as that primer thing in their life that they need to deal with.
I suppose there's a bit of element of practice to it as well. Looking at a lot of the literature around mindfulness and mindfulness-based stress reduction and its let's say efficacy when dealing with not just physical pain but any other emotions. It seems like a lot of it comes down to learning to acknowledge that pain is there and working with it, not ignoring it, but taking it as just another parameter that is there, while focusing on the goal or the purpose that is there, whether of just the practice or something beyond that.
Yeah. What comes to mind? I was just thinking about, so when we started Mind Takeaway, and it was this great idea, and it came from us, from where we were at the moment, and wanting to do something more impactful and do something that we like doing. At the beginning I had a problem with confidence, like, who am I to do this? Even though I had this even though I had this all great experience, like who am I to do that? Who am I to talk to somebody who is in leadership position and who, I admire in a way, and tell them, things, or, coach them or whatever. And so it was interesting because once I realized what the purpose is, why am I actually doing it? And it's not just to help that leader, just help that one person. It's really help them be leaders, better leaders to others. Because if they feel good, they will do better things. If they understand themselves better, they will do better. And then that will impact people around them, and then that will impact people around them. So when you look at the purpose is not personal, it's not just for me. The moment I saw it bigger than me, then I could get over my discomfort and get over myself, so to speak, and then do it and be more courageous in what I'm doing. Yeah.
Is that what a clarity coach does?
I think so. Yeah. It's to help you see, to get you out of your own head, to get over self-thinking and drop into the space of clarity where you see, I mean, it just whole world, just that word says it. It's just see things clearly, see what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what is the next step to take, and not overthinking it, not second guessing yourself.
Are there any methods or techniques or tricks or tools that you use to get over that first step?
It's first is to remind them they actually know how to do that. Like, we all have moments of clarity, don't we?
Yeah.
We just forget, and then there's certain areas in life where we are very easy to, we go with our intuition, we know what to do, we know what not to do, and all of that. And then there's other areas in our life when we are very doubtful, and so it's really, first step is to show people that they already know how to do that. They already are good at doing it, and then finding ways how they do it. And then it just starts making sense in doing it in other areas of their life. So it's not so much what I'm giving them to do. It's more discovering how they already do it so that they can implement what works for them. And really what I do is listen. Listening has a huge component over there, because when I drop into space of listening to somebody, they're more likely to do that themselves. If somebody starts talking and I want to do this and what about this, and then I'm thinking about that, you can see that they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And then just slowly they start, slowing down and clearing out. And then, sometimes you don't even say anything. They go, oh, actually,
Yeah. So you kind of help them get through the fuzzy clouds that are blocking their view that is always there for them.
Yeah, and there's lots of education. There's lots of, understanding what's happening and why they do it, and, why they think that way and why they don't feel confident in certain areas. And, I'm a big believer into, teaching people how to fish, getting to know themselves. So they can, that's something that you never lose then.
Sweet. When you feel overwhelmed or when you feel you have lost focus temporarily, do you go to someone? Do you read a book? Are there any reminders that get you back into focus?
Well, there is some podcasts that I listen, like some of my mentors that, I can just connect with that. There's somebody that I've heard that really explained it really well, that I'm going to steal. It says, when I listen to something, they were listening to their mentor, and then I was listening to my mentor, and this guy's called Jamie Smart. It makes it so easy to hear myself. And so those are moments where I can, and I guess it helps me listen to something, helps me to calm down, not to be in my head and think. So for some people that can be music, I also like going for a walk. And I also like sometimes spending time on my own, meditating. And so, yeah, listening to me, it could be I either would meditate or listen to something that gets me to drop into the space of meditation, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Do you think that part has changed for you? It's something that I noticed in my own practice as well, that when I started with mindfulness, one of the first things I realized was that I was easily thrown off by certain circumstances, and it was very hard to get back. There would be moments something happened at work, and for 3 days I'm angry and unhappy. But but with more practice, it starts to get better. And kind of doing the things you described, going for a walk, writing it down, listening to yourself, or listening to your favorite podcast. My favorite is John Kabat-Zinn's guided meditation. It's something that I just go back to, and it puts me back in that space where I can listen to myself. And over time, it has gotten much easier. It's rare to be angry for 3 days now.
Yeah, more time you spend in that space, it's much easier to return, isn't it? It's I found that. I mean, I remember the time when I started meditating, and that was, my God, it's probably 2011, 2012. I was so anxious that I could not sit and meditate. I would run on a treadmill and meditate.
Wow.
And just meditate, allow myself to focus, And so, it definitely got better. But it takes time. It takes time to get, I think we also get comfortable, like we get addicted to feelings in a way, you get comfortable in being angry, you get comfortable in being anxious. It's because it's what you know, it looks normal. And so it sometimes takes a little bit of time to make something else normal, that it's more useful to you, I guess.
So in this time, since you started meditating, and especially the last 5-6 years that you have been coaching, what are some of the mental models or habits that you have changed, or new things that you have picked up that have served you well?
Okay. Well, one of the things that I would call it an insight about myself. Few things that I've realized is that people are okay. Like, people don't need to be fixed. We're great. We already know everything. We just forgot, we got programmed out of it. So for me, coaching, coaching myself, being in conversations with my coach or with people or with Peter or with anybody else, it's really reminding myself of that. And so when I work with people is really reminding them that they are already okay, that they already have that confidence, that it's I found it much easier than trying to change somebody, and especially if you're trying to change something that doesn't need changing. It's hard work, it's a hard job, so reminding gets easier. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that we never stop being human. Like, we always go up and down, and you can't stop thinking. So you'll have a scary thought and then you'll freak out, and and it's recognizing it. It's being mindful about it, recognizing it when it's happening, so you don't get caught into it. You don't lash out at people. You don't destroy your relationship just because you got scared. And so and being grateful and gracious about it when it happens, because just this morning I had a freak out and I didn't feel confident, and when I'm kind to myself about it, it goes away quickly. Oh, I didn't see it again, that's what I've done, I can apologize, I can but when when you beat yourself up, when you don't think you're okay and you try to change yourself to be okay, it's a hard job. It's not really, it's not sustainable. So that's, I guess, the other thing. I don't know what could be something else. Like, I'm trying to find something really, really big, but I think all these things are actually quite small, but then quite big in our lives, isn't it? You can listen to. I think that's also another thing, is being intellectual about something and then really understanding it deep inside, like understanding it with your heart. I think that's one of the things that I've learned. I was always very intellectual about stuff. I would not ever called myself a spiritual person. I didn't even know what it was. And so, I would try to reason stuff. I'll try to figure it out. I'll read research about it. And then there was this moment when I would just stop thinking and know it's true. And I think I learned that a lot from artists, and I think that was a great part of living in Berlin. You meet so many people that are doing different types of arts, and my partner is also a musician. So when you listen to them, they don't think about music that they're making. They don't think about painting. They don't think about it. It just comes to them. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned on my journey, is to not always be so much in my head, but allow things that are in you to come out.
Fascinating. One common thread I find in all of this is kind of what you mentioned earlier with regards to pain as well, to not judge the pain, to get over it. And I hear that again and again in these different versions of it, if you get angry, to not judge yourself for getting angry and have two problems now. But to allow it to unfold and allow intuition to unfold. Do you see any challenges people face when they come to you as a coach, and in those first moments when you're trying to convey to them that they might already know the answer. Do you feel there's a resistance to that? Because in a way, there's a bit of that judgment or self-judgment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's because we think that there is something on the outside to fix, to change, to, I'm not okay, but it's often a misunderstanding where it comes from, and there is. I mean, I was like that as well. Yes, but there's always that yes, but, and so. But the moment the mind starts quieting down, the moment the clarity, we get clarity, then it becomes obvious. Then everything is obvious. Everything makes sense. Why did I make that stupid decision a year ago that I still think about and freak out whenever I think about it? It actually, with the knowledge that you had, with everything that was happening, with all your fears, doubts, blah, 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 in that moment, with all that busyness in your head, you could not have made a better decision. That was the best decision at the moment. And then they go, so if I had more information, if I had more clutter added to it, I wouldn't have made any better decision. No? And so that's the moment that changes when we go from yes, but to yes, I see. But yeah, it's the challenge. But that's why people come to us, isn't it? They come because they don't see something. And our job is to help them to see. Our job isn't to fix them, because they're already doing very good job. They're already in high performing humans. It's just to help them see what they don't see, I guess, if that makes sense.
I think so, and we'll have to re-listen to the episode to make that judgment. Let's talk a bit about the growth mindset. So it totally resonates with me when you say most of the time we do already have the answers. It is often unclarity that that clouds what we can see. If we already have answers, and if that is where you start, then where does growth mindset come in? How should I picture this? What am I aiming for when I'm working with a coach or just by myself?
Yeah, that's a good thing to clarify. It doesn't mean that we know everything. Like, it doesn't mean that I know what Einstein knows or knew. It just means that I also know what I don't know. It means that I know what I need to do next. So that's the wisdom part. Okay, so I'm clear that this is the part that I still don't understand, and I need to go and find some information about it, And sometimes, but then you're looking for the specific thing you need. You're not going all over the place, and you're not doing the wrong thing. Like, for example, the person that I was working with some time ago, she was absolutely certain. She's an engineer, a researcher, that really enjoys her job. But then she became doubtful, unhappy. She didn't think that she can get what she actually wants. So she was like, I want to become a psychologist. Like, I want to study again, and I want to go from very beginning and become a psychologist, because I think I'm very good, and people come to me because I know how to listen and all of that. And I said, well, let's talk about it. And then we had just a few sessions, and she realized that actually that's not what she wants to do. What she wants to do is actually teach what she knows. She wants to be a professor. And for that, she needs to, so she's got her master's, she needs to do a doctorate in specific things that she really enjoys. and then she can do that. And because it wasn't clear to her how she could do it right now, or what she can do right now, she went on to, something totally different. And when she got clarity, she was like, actually, that's not what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And so it's not always, it's not that we have absolutely every information and know absolutely everything in the universe, but we do know what we need to do next, or what we want to do next, or what's our direction. And then the growth mindset, or going forward, comes from that space, not from doubts or, oh, I can't do this, therefore I'll just do that. That's the second best. And this is where you lose, what we were talking at the beginning, this is where you lose power, because you're doing something that you actually don't really enjoy.
So that's a very interesting point you make, and it's something that I've been fascinated with for a long time as well. Why do we do things, and why do we choose one thing over another, and how do we get to that point of clarity? Because often we start with, I want to be a psychologist, but really it is, I want to teach, or the other way around as well. Sometimes we want to teach, we say we want to teach, but then it's more like, I want to teach in practice. So that's my case. I used to think that I could make a good teacher, and I appreciate teachers. But over time, I realized I'd rather teach in practice. So kind of that put me on this journey of leadership in my own small scale. So there are these things that seem to be kind of mental models, or some universality when it comes to things that we lack or things that we miss. And once you put the right skill or the right coach next to that, it leads us to clarity. I suppose you can already imagine where I'm going with this. You said you used to be analytical and thinking all the time. Have you thought about what are some of these kind of core skills or mental models that we miss? And in particular, since you work a lot with leaders, do you think there are some things that seem to be missing in the leadership curriculum, or how people approach it?
Yeah, I think in there's, but in leadership there is this idea of a leader that it's, now we see it's redundant, but because we grew up with that idea, that leader is somebody who looks like this, talks like this, and even when you look at the diversity piece, they're all male and white. When you look at big people in corporations in leadership positions, so it's really hard to fit into that model. And I think this is where also there's lots of imposter syndrome in leadership, is because we actually don't fit in the model that it's somewhere deep ingrained in our mind, and so the changing it needs to happen. But can you go back to, I think I lost it. Am I going in the right direction with this answer?
I think so. We are trying to figure out what are some of the core skills or attitudes of leaderships.
Yeah. And so I think for a leader, what is really important is to know themselves. It's to know, and that's something that it's not taught. We focus on often wrong things, and not that they're entirely wrong. That's also important. But what's missing is knowing themselves, knowing their own emotions at the moment. We need to be very emotionally intelligent, but where we go wrong with that is that we are trying to be intelligent about other people, but then we forget about ourselves. Where am I in this moment? What am I feeling in this moment? What am I bringing and labeling to somebody else, to my team, my insecurities? Allow leaders to be vulnerable is one of the huge things that we are missing. And because if we are not, we are covering it up, and then we are projecting everything on the people around us, and that can destroy companies. Why did Kodak disappear? Is because the CEO, wasn't vulnerable and open enough to see that he was wrong. And so so that's the other thing. The other thing is relationship with people. See, leader is somebody who needs to have a really good relationship with themselves and also really good relationship with other people. And and we think it's, you know, it's we often think that it's waste of time to spend time talking to people, that it's waste of time to you know, it's waste of time to develop these relationships, to just talk about anything, because you really need to get to know people and develop trust. But that seems to be missing. Lately I'm really, you know, I'm kind of banging about efficiency. It's all about efficiency, and we are missing so much, because we are just looking at numbers, but we are not looking at what's behind those numbers. And then, you know, once you have and then again, you know, where you want to go in life, I think leaders have to have really good direction, and direction comes from clarity. And so you know, if you don't have clarity as a leader, you'll make, you know, you'll make more mistakes. I mean, we can have clarity and still do something that it's not great, you know, but it's the ability to know yourself and drop from being an analytical leader and looking at numbers. You need that as well. But then again, being able to connect with yourself and other people from the space of humanity, from the space of heart, as some people would say, rather than from your head.
Well, that's amazing.
And that's, I think, something that...
Yeah. There's something that that kind of screamed at me as you were speaking, that we call emotional intelligence, right? It's about understanding your own emotional state and in relation to other people as well, and how you portray it. And as a leader, in a way, you're always in the spotlight, and so there's also a much bigger onus on you to keep learning and to keep showing and keep supporting others. I feel that is something, I'm always trying to find the right words for it, but I feel like in most companies we hire people and we forget about the fact that they're people and therefore works in progress. And we just kind of assume that whatever they bring in was perfect, and we stop learning. And as a leader, what you're saying is you got to keep at it. Because without that, you kind of portray something that is not true, and you might make mistakes and kind of repeat old patterns all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, as a leader, you need to be open to always learning. And I think there's this mental map of a leader as a person that knows everything, or that should know everything. And I think that's the biggest blind spot, because leadership also means that you're humble and that you can see where you're wrong and acknowledge it, and even share it with people, because otherwise you're just digging yourself in a hole. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, leaders never, I mean, we're all leaders in some way in our lives, but it's that never stop growing, never think that this is it, because nobody does. I mean, there's so many things that I, you know, catch myself. I go, oh, I didn't see that until now. You know, it was so obvious. But it's that thing. It's the being gracious in your highs and being graceful in your lows. Grateful, yeah.
Amazing. So in my experience, I often see female leaders are actually much more open, vulnerable, and communicative about their emotions, and are definitely much more honest about what they see coming and don't see coming. And I almost feel that given the fact that we still have a very much male-dominated hierarchical system in the workplace, it's kind of another thing that works against female leaders, because by showing vulnerability, they kind of take some points off their pedigree that a male leader would rake up with their let's say undue confidence. Do you feel the same, that kind of just being a bit more honest tends to work against female leaders, or in general when we talk about diverse people?
Well, it's really, there's two things about vulnerability. It's where it comes from, and I think vulnerability is honesty. Like, to be truly vulnerable is to be honest with yourself and others. And it's not about, it's not about sharing everything that you feel in any moment. And I think this is why it sometimes can get a little bit tricky, is to really know what to share and how to share. But it can be, I mean, again, that's the old model, and I really don't know how it works for leaders that never really show vulnerability. I think they're really disconnected. They're not good with their teams. They're disconnected from themselves and others. And I also think they don't have even personal relationships really good. So even though it might look on the outside that they're more successful, I don't think that's on the inside, at least not in my experience. And I've worked with some of the leaders who are like this. And then the other side, for female leaders, I think we're still learning. I think we are still learning how to be vulnerable and not to portray ourselves as victims. And I think this is where it can get tricky, because I think this is where people misunderstand, that if you are vulnerable, you're either not good enough or you're trying to portray yourself as a victim. And it's really getting that out. And I think it needs a little bit more education, and not stopping being vulnerable, and not stopping being who you are, being more emotional, being more connected, being more supportive of people, just because somebody doesn't like it. Because any change, people are not comfortable with change. I mean, I was recently watching a series called Genius, and it's Albert Einstein and Picasso, and I don't know who else later on. I didn't watch all of it, but these were the people that were doing things differently. And whenever you start doing things differently, people don't like it. But it doesn't mean that you should stop doing it. It's. I think it takes courage, and I admire women in leadership position, because it's not easy. It's not easy to stay who you are over there, because there is a tendency to start behaving like a role model. There's a tendency to do that. So it's not easy. But it takes courage, and it's good.
Now, those are all very important points, right? It takes courage, being a role model in a world where most other role models are people who steamrolled their way through their careers, right? If you look at the 60s and 70s, most of the role models are people who are men, old white men, who would power through their career, and leaving a whole bunch of dead bodies in their wake. That's obviously a lot of work and time needs to pass before we can take kind of equality and inclusion in leadership as a given. So
yeah. I mean, I was just watching. Was it last week? There was it's initiative from Women on Boards organization, to, I think it was 10 years ago that there was the policy in European Union that we wanted until this year or until last year to have 40-60, so 40% of women on boards in companies in Europe. And it's been 10 years and we are failing miserably. You know, there are some countries like UK is pretty good. Norway, I think, as well. Germany isn't very good. You know, not to talk about Poland and Hungary and, you know, Italy, where you actually don't really see. So it's interesting to see the numbers because it's not a priority yet. And you know, we talk about women that are also probably went to same schools and have similar type of background. But, you know, what about people that are, you know, from different countries, from different backgrounds, you know, different skin colors, different, you know, that's really something that we need to work on.
Indeed. What are some of the challenges women or anybody, let's say, including any preference, any skin color, any belief system, any sexual preference, what are the challenges they face? Do you see kind of is it just a historical fact that there's less people of diverse backgrounds in the workplace, or do you also see that now kind of the, let's say, the soft sexism, soft racism is still there, and we need to work on it, let's say, consciously?
Yeah, there's both, and so because it really we are fighting, if I can call it that, say it that way, a model, and it's never easy. So we are fighting belief systems and prejudices of other people. And we are also doing the same internally. Our own limitations, our own self-limiting beliefs, our own biases towards, you know, how can I be there? Who am I to? You know, and so we often don't even try. I mean, the amount of women that stops going into, because, you know, it's not worth, you know, my mental health. I'm just going to stay and do this. Or, you know, I'll start my own business. So I'm really happy to see there is much more women entrepreneurs. And so it's, we are not just fighting prejudices of other people, but also prejudices of that we have ourselves, that we are holding. You know, I was a refugee. There is still a little refugee in me that goes, you know, who are you? You know, and so we really need to be aware of these things and not allow it to stop us and look at the bigger picture. You know, look at who we really are and what are we capable of, and why is it important that we do what we do. Because otherwise, it's, you know, it's not so much that other people will stop us. It's more of what we believe that it's possible. What it's our own thing, you know. It's our own biases about what's possible for us because we are not fitting into that model that it's over there. So I think that will stop us more than actually somebody else over there. And you know, yes, there is a model. Yes, there is a whole structure that is created in a certain way and takes time to change. But it really starts from us. It starts from us going in that direction, and then, you know, maybe if we don't succeed, somebody else will after us.
Amen to that. So let's shift topics a bit. Is that what Unlearning Labels podcast is also about, or is you have a different focus over there?
It is. Unlearning Labels is more about literally unlearning those labels that we have created in the workplace, about, you know, labels that we put on something or somebody or certain situation, and then the meaning we give to it. Because, I mean, even like there was an interesting episode that we did about HR. You know, HR has a really negative connotation in the workplace, and, you know, we all kind of see limitations in there, and then we, you know, HR people are bad, and then when we actually spoke to HR people and we digged a little bit deeper, we actually saw that that's absolutely wrong. You know, there is a reason why they are limited themselves to do certain things, but because we don't see that, we see them in the forefront, we, you know, they're the guilty party. And so everything that you look at beyond the label, it looks different. You know, it's you know, we were talking about mindfulness earlier, and it's, you know, what would you see if there was no label? Like, what would you see about the simple thing like a tree if there was no label? If there was no, oh, this is a tree, and that means that, you know, it never moves, and it means that I don't know, it has to have green leaves, or that leaves fall in the fall, or whatever. What would you see about the tree that you don't see because there is a label over there? You would see it as a, I don't know, a house for birds, a house for insects. You would actually maybe learn that it moves. You know, somebody did the research, and so there are so many things that we don't see when we focus on our label. You know, when we focus on a certain, you know, and that's why I'm a big believer that putting people into boxes, like with Myers-Briggs and all the other personality tests, can be very damaging, because it labels person to be something that they're not. Because label is not who you are. I mean, you have a name, and you're a coach, and you have your startup, but that's not who you are. Those are the things that you do. And then when it stops making sense to do them, you'll do something else. And so Indeed. If we label, and if we label a person, you know, you're an engineer, and you do your work, and you did it your whole life, and then you retired, so you lose yourself. You know, and so it's really interesting to look at it. What more is possible when there is no label? Like, what else can we see in the person and about the person when we take the label away?
I think that's a great example as well. I wanted to share an example in one of my recent experiences. I was working with a team, and they had a QA person, a software tester. So in software, people do some programming, they create a software like the one that we are using for recording, and there's somebody who checks it, tests it, that it still works. And ideally you want it to be different people, so there's a different perspective. Now in this case, this was a woman, and well, what do you do as a tester? You test things, and if you find problems, you report them. And so you start getting this label that you're the person who's always complaining, who's always coming back to me with problems. And it's a very common thing. Of course, you mentioned engineers, HR people. It's the same with leaders as well. We end up creating these labels. And in this group, we kind of almost got to a bit of a toxic situation because there were more issues being found, and nobody wants issues to be found in their product, so to say. But we had a team reflection session, and in that session, I ended up asking a simple question where I was like, "What made you happy today?" And everybody shared their different things, and this woman shared the fact that her child had had a very good exam, and she was quite anxious about that, and so was the child. And now that the exam was over, she got the text message during that day, and she felt relieved and happy about that. And there was this moment where people or other people saw her as a human being with a child who cares about their child and gets worried about them. And of course, other people telling their story. There was this moment where the label disappeared, where they got to see each other just as another human being who also has worries and joys outside of work, as well as themselves. And over time, that relationship has transformed, and it's in a much more beautiful place. We did a lot of other work as well, but this was one example where it was kind of like we do put a lot of labels on each other, and it often takes somebody from the outside to question it or kind of help us see beyond that, and beautiful things follow.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's so. Yeah, I mean, I just had a story in my head when you were saying this. I heard this. It wasn't. I heard this from a friend that was interviewing for a job, and the HR. He had an interview with the HR person, and I think it was HR, and this person said, we really it's our culture in our company is really important, and we want to have an open culture where people feel safe, where it's that's listen to this. That's why we don't employ male Arabs.
Wow.
Yeah, and the person, I mean, I'm sure they're a really nice person. They don't even realize what they said. There is a huge label on the because they always create problems because they they're not nice to women and la la la, and so and that's a huge problem with labels. They that's an open bias, and it's something that this person doesn't see. And that's actually everything against the culture that you want to create.
Yeah.
And so if you're not open to seeing a person who they are, not the label that they've got because, the news or whatever, or some TV program, then we are really into lots of trouble. Yeah.
Indeed. But let's imagine, let's dream a bit. So let's suppose people were more honest and vulnerable and much more aware of how they are internally and externally. What kind of a world would that be?
Oh, great! It just really it's on my screensaver. A world without war, without inequality, poverty, and war. That's what we would get. Then we would not. Then there would be nothing to fight against and fight for, I think. If we were comfortable being ourselves, what else do you need?
Indeed.
Yeah, but it's where we are striving. How long will it take to get there? I don't know, but
Do you think it's possible?
I think it's let's go, if we go back a little bit into Buddhism, there's yin and yang, there is black and white, and then there's the fact that we can see objects in the real world. It means there's light and shadow. Yeah, and so it's I think it's possible that we become kinder to ourselves and others. And in this way, we can avoid catastrophes, that we can, avoid wars and stuff like that. But I think there will always have to be a certain amount of chaos that will keep us, they will keep us growing. I think that's something that we can't avoid, and it's absolutely fine. But because I think what we think of when we are talking about the world without inequality, poverty, and war, it looks like utopia. It looks static. But life is never static, is it? Things are changing. We are moving, and I think in order to, when we are squeezed, we grow. I mean, when you don't have, this is where the creativity comes from. When you don't have options, you create some. When you have problems, you solve them, and that's just part of being human. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It definitely wouldn't be peace all the time, but I'm just hoping without war.
Well, let's hope we employ some creativity and invite meaningful chaos into our lives.
Yeah, that one would be nice.
So, Mira, we have reached our 1 hour mark. Is there any message you would like to give people listening to this podcast? Let me change the question. If you had a giant billboard and millions of people will see that billboard, what sentence, paragraph would you put on it?
Oh, ask. And I think that was one of my, when we feel insecure, when we feel uncomfortable, when we feel low in confidence, when we feel that we are not good enough, when we feel anxious, depressed, all of that, we stop asking. We stop asking for help. We stop asking for opinions. We stop communicating with people. And what we really need to do then is be reminded that it's okay to ask for help, to ask for anything, because people really are over there that are willing to help, and it's really easy to forget. So I think it would be, it's okay to ask. That would be on the billboard, just as a reminder, because I think that's the first thing we forget.
So it's okay to ask. Thank you, Mira. Listeners, viewers, you can find Mira on the Takeaway podcast, the mindtakeaway.com. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's the website. Look for Unlearning Labels, anything. We'll put all the links in the show notes as well. Mira, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me. This was really wonderful conversation, and I think we spoke about lots of things that are important, and also it's not something that we normally talk about, is it?
Indeed.
Thank you for that.
Pleasure. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone. See you soon again. Ciao.
Bye.